Empires didn't collapse because they were weak. They collapsed because they became too complicated to survive. Too many rules. Too many systems. Too many moving parts. And when the crisis came, nobody understood the machine anymore. If you think complexity equals intelligence, this episode will disturb you. Before we begin, subscribe now, because Top 10 Untold is not just about history, it's about the patterns quietly shaping our future. And today's pattern, it might already be running your life. Let's begin. Warning: 10. Late Roman bureaucracy overload. When the western half of the Roman Empire began to tremble, it wasn't from barbarian swords alone. It was drowning in paperwork. Under emperors like Diocletian, the empire reorganized itself into an intricate web of administrators. Provinces multiplied. Tax records exploded. Civil servants ballooned. Every grain shipment, every military movement, every tax levy required documentation, verification, seals. What was once a lean imperial system became an administrative labyrinth. The intention was survival. The result: paralysis. Local officials feared making decisions without imperial approval. Taxation systems grew so complex that citizens fled to avoid compliance. Soldiers waited for supply authorizations that moved slower than invading armies. When crisis hit: invasions, economic contraction, political instability, Rome did not lack manpower. It lacked speed. Its own complexity became heavier than its enemies. Present parallel. Modern governments today often have more administrators than frontline problem solvers. When crisis strikes: pandemic, war, financial crash, layers of approval slow action. Future question: if a system becomes so complex that only specialists understand it, who truly controls it? Warning: 9. Chinese imperial exam rigidity. For over a millennium, the civil service of Imperial China relied on one system, the examination model. The meritocratic dream. Under dynasties like the Ming Dynasty and Qing Dynasty, scholars memorized classical Confucian texts for years to earn positions in governance. The system was brilliant, until it wasn't. By the late imperial period, the exams became rigid rituals. Candidates mastered poetic structure and ancient philosophy but not modern military science, engineering, or global economics. When Western powers arrived with steamships and artillery, China had administrators skilled in literary elegance, but not industrial adaptation. The system was too refined, too structured, too narrow. It selected for conformity over innovation. Present parallel. Education systems today often reward test performance over problem-solving adaptability. Psychological lens. When survival demands flexibility, does your system produce thinkers, or repeaters? Warning: 8. Medieval church administrative bloat. During the height of medieval Europe, the Catholic Church became the most sophisticated institution on earth. Canon law, diocesan records, ecclesiastical courts, indulgence documentation. By the time of the late Middle Ages, the spiritual body had grown into an administrative superstructure. Salvation could be quantified. Penance could be purchased. Permissions required paperwork. The machinery of faith expanded beyond simplicity. And when reformers like Martin Luther challenged the system, the Church's complexity made reform nearly impossible without rupture. The result? The Reformation, not because faith died, but because structure overwhelmed spirit. Present parallel. Organizations that over-regulate themselves often struggle to reform internally, collapse or schism becomes inevitable. Warning 7 French Ancien Regime tax maze. Before the French Revolution, the system under the Ancien Regime was a masterpiece of confusion. Multiple overlapping taxes. Taille, gabelle, corvée, church tithes, nobles exempt, clergy privileged, peasants burdened. Even the king's treasury struggled to track revenue efficiently. When financial crisis struck, exacerbated by war debts and court extravagance under Louis XVI, reform attempts failed because no one could untangle the system without angering powerful interests. Complexity protected elites and destroyed the regime. Present parallel. When taxation systems become too complex, they lose legitimacy. Brutal question. If a system cannot be simplified without collapse, was it stable to begin with? Warning 6 Soviet Central Planning Overload. The planned economy of the Soviet Union attempted something unprecedented. Control everything. Steel quotas. Grain targets. Factory outputs. 5-year plans. In theory, centralized planning eliminated waste. In practice, it created a mathematical nightmare. Millions of data points. Layer upon layer of reporting. Managers falsifying numbers to meet quotas. By the 1980s, the system became so informationally overloaded that accurate data barely existed. When reform attempts began under Mikhail Gorbachev, complexity prevented precise correction. The system could not diagnose itself. And what cannot diagnose, cannot heal. The collapse was not sudden. It was systemic overload. Warning 5 Modern financial derivatives. In 2008, markets didn't crash because housing was expensive. They crashed because no one understood what they owned. Collateralized debt obligations, credit default swaps, structured investment vehicles. The architecture was so complex that even executives inside major firms could not trace exposure chains. When Lehman Brothers collapsed, panic spread not just from losses, but from uncertainty. Complexity erased transparency. Financial instruments designed to distribute risk had instead concealed it. Present parallel. When risk is hidden inside layers of abstraction, survival becomes guesswork. Psychological question. Would you trust a system that its creators cannot fully explain? Warning 4 Healthcare bureaucracy overload. Modern healthcare systems in many developed nations are technologically advanced, but administratively overwhelming. Insurance coding. Authorization forms, billing layers, regulatory compliance. Doctors increasingly spend more time on documentation than patient interaction. Hospitals hire armies of administrators to navigate the maze. The intention, accountability and precision. The result, burnout, delay, cost inflation. Complexity saves no one if treatment slows down. Warning 3 Military procurement complexity. Modern militaries pursue precision, but procurement systems often become so intricate that projects stall for decades. Consider development struggles within the U.S. Department of Defense framework. multiple contractors, oversight committees, budget approvals, political negotiations. The weapon may be advanced, but its approval path can be glacial. In war, speed matters more than perfection. Too many layers mean delayed readiness. And delayed readiness invites vulnerability. Warning to corporate compliance paralysis. Large corporations today navigate regulatory frameworks across multiple countries. Compliance teams expand. Internal policies multiply. Approval chains lengthen. Risk avoidance becomes obsession. Innovation slows. Employees hesitate to act without clearance. Over time, companies become safe but stagnant. In hyper-competitive environments, stagnation equals decline. Warning: 1 AI system opacity risks. Artificial intelligence systems today are more powerful than ever, but increasingly opaque. Deep neural networks process billions of parameters. Even their creators cannot fully interpret decision pathways. When AI systems make financial decisions, medical diagnoses, military assessments, the logic may be statistically accurate, but not explainable. We are building systems too complex for human comprehension. If one day a critical AI makes an error, who will understand why, and how quickly could we fix it? The most dangerous complexity is the one that feels efficient until it fails. History whispers the same warning again and again. When survival demands clarity, complexity kills. Not instantly, not dramatically, but slowly. Systems designed to optimize everything end up controlling nothing. If this episode unsettled you, good. Because the world is not becoming simpler. It is accelerating toward deeper layers of invisible complexity. And the question is no longer whether systems are complicated. It is whether we can still understand them. Subscribe to Top 10 Untold if you want to decode the patterns shaping collapse before collapse becomes obvious. Because the next warning may already be unfolding.